I'm back. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, great to see you, old friend.
Good to see you.
Glad you joined us. We missed you the other weekend at the conference,
Yeah, it
but
was.
I'm sure you did a great job up in New York. I'm sure you spread the word of peace. So,
Well, thank you.
we'll press you into service next time. Looks like are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Good.
You are active. So anyway, we're here to spend a half an hour visiting about Julian Assange. I was telling Nat earlier that Dr. Paul and I did a show on Thursday about how the torture of Assange, about not just the 6 years he's been forced to live in inhuman conditions, but, think about these last few months where he's not even been able to get news from the outside world. I saw several posts on Twitter. I'm sure you saw them too, Ray, that even prisoners in maximum security have more outside contact. And this fellow, this hero, this truth teller, who's done nothing wrong. What are your thoughts as things get worse, Ray?
Well, Daniel, as you know, when you say he's done nothing wrong, well, come on, he told the truth. I mean,
that's right.
Not only told the truth, but he used documentary evidence without treatment. Now, this is interesting because that phrase comes from Harry S. Truman, who set up the CIA for the express purpose of giving him analysis drawn from all agencies, therefore central, from the Central Intelligence Agency, quote, without treatment, end quote. Okay, what does that mean? That means that Julian, for example, takes these documents and he doesn't fool around with them. He orders them in a searchable form, which is a service to all of us, but then he puts them out and lets them speak for themselves. My God, wow. And so on the 22nd of July, 2016, when he released the emails, as he described them, pertaining to Hillary Clinton, well, those were the real DNC, Democratic National Committee, and her own emails. Well, what did they say? Well, most Americans were deprived of what was in those emails because the headlines in the New York Times and the Washington Post all were, why did the Russians do this? Why did the Russians? Hey, it's an act of war. John McCain, it's an act of war. Why did the Russians do this? It was, there's a novel or a movie actually called Magnificent Obsession. Well, this was a magnificent distraction. They had from June 12th to July 22nd to figure out how they were going to handle this revelation, which amounted to showing how Hillary Clinton and the DNC stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders, pure and simple. I mean, you read the emails, please. But nobody read the emails because the headlines were all about what the Russians did, why the Russians do this. And I had privileged access to Jennifer Palmieri. Privileged access? Who's she? Well, she was Hillary's PR person in charge of all the PR. Privileged access? I live in Washington. That way I can go to all manner of think tanks, including Podesta's and Hillary's think tank, the Center for Progress or something like that, American, whatever it was.
American Progress, yeah.
So I go to that, and here's Jennifer Palmieri. This is just about 2 months after the election. And she's saying, it was quite amazing. We were told to push the line at the Democratic National Convention, which was started on the 25th of July, 2016, to push the line that the Russians hacked into the DNC because they wanted Hillary to lose and they wanted Trump to win. Now, we had trouble selling that. I mean, I took a golf cart around to all the cable and the other outlets and I pushed it like I was supposed to. But even I had wow. And so that was the 25th and following of July. Now, when we got back to Brooklyn, Brooklyn, of course, was Hillary Clinton's campaign headquarters. When we got back to Brooklyn, which was a week or two later, then intelligence sources and journalists in touch with intelligence sources began to fill out the picture and show how the Russians had hacked. And then the Obama administration would confirm this or that little detail. Then we were off and running. Okay, now she said all that, and she also wrote a big article for the Washington Post on it. So she's proud of how she diverted attention at Hillary's behest from what was in those emails. Because after all, if Bernie Sanders had what we would all like to see in the terms of backbone, he would have read the emails or had somebody read them for him, and he would have insisted on an open convention. Now, I don't know much about U.S. politics. Maybe that's wrong. But for him to tuck tail and for all his delegates to say, oh, now we vote for Hillary. Oh, sure, we'll support Hillary. Well, I'll finish up by saying there was one apparent Bernie Sanders worker who did go to work for Hillary out of some sort of duty to the Democrats. And then he or she, I don't know who it was, read the emails. I could just see them, these young 20, let's say he's 27. So if you look at you, like that, holy expletives. This is somebody's got to know about this. Like everybody's got to know about this. What he does, and this is not 100% proven, but pretty much forensically proven. What he or she did, was stick a little thumb drive into his or her computer, download the DNC emails, get in touch somehow with Julian Assange's folks, and got them to Julian Assange. Now, what is other evidence that that's the way it happened? I'll tell you. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, 2 days before he left office, he had a press conference. And he asked them about this. And he said, and I quote, the conclusions of the intelligence community with respect to how Russian hacking got to WikiLeaks are inconclusive. Period. Close quote. Well, so we got inconclusive conclusions just 12 days after Obama was briefed on this poor excuse for an intelligence assessment, which said not only that they did it, not only that they gave it to WikiLeaks, but Putin himself ordered all this stuff, So 12 days after that, after Obama is told what to say, for some reason, he tells a half-truth, namely that the U.S. intelligence community doesn't have the foggiest idea as to how a hack like this got to Julian Assange. And my NSA colleagues and veteran intelligence professionals for sanity assure me that the Ecuadorian embassy in London is covered, as they call it, cast iron, okay? That means that no signal gets in there, no signal gets out of there, and I'm sure the same is true for coverage of Julian's, the people who work with Julian. So, please, it wasn't a hack, it was a leak, and the reason I go back to the emails is because those emails were incredibly damaging. They should have cost Hillary Clinton the nomination, and then, my God, can you think of it? And then we wouldn't have this clown, Donald Trump, as president. Whose fault is it? Well, I wouldn't blame the Russians. No evidence there. How about Hillary Clinton, if she hadn't cheated that way, if she hadn't been proven to cheat that way, despite the best efforts of the FBI to disguise this and let her off free, we would have Bernie Sanders as president of the United States. In my view, again, I'm no political expert on internal affairs, but it seems to me clear that that's what would have happened.
Ray, that reminds me of all of our foreign interventions. We to stop Iran, we invade Iraq, we destabilize Syria, and what happens? Iran comes out on top. So to try to prevent a Sanders presidency, we get a Trump presidency. So
Yeah.
They always seem to screw it up, don't they?
Well, they do, unless, this is really, really cynical. But there are people that profiteer on these mistakes, people that manufacture arms.
You're shocking me, Ray. You really are.
What's that?
I said, you're shocking me. I can't believe it. I was just in Washington for our conference, a couple of weeks ago, and every time I go back there, I'm astonished at how, it used to be that the military-industrial complex built its buildings way out by Dulles. Now you're in Arlington right by the freeway, and there's massive Pentagon City, Crystal City, massive multi-story buildings, Raytheon, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's got to be some profit in this, I think.
Well, Daniel, I have to tell you that I've been in Washington for 55 years now. Rosslyn, which is part of Arlington right across the river, now is one of these magnificent tall building Raytheon, BAEC, all it Grumman and everything. And when I first moved there, it was comprised of 2 pawn shops and 3 gas stations. I kid you not. So, here's tangible evidence that the Arlington County Board was really smart in getting all this money from these high roller agencies, keeping our home taxes down. But my God, what does it reveal? As you say, not only going out to Dulles Airport, all these. Now, half of our spending goes to military uses. And why can't people understand that? Why people, when they're paying their taxes, why don't they realize that, half of this is really, or almost half of it is really unnecessary. We have to educate the people better. We have to find ways to break into their consciousness and say, you're being had.
Yeah.
It's not for you to live this way. You're being had.
It's, problems of patriotism. Middle America, the people, the blue-collar workers are being sold a cheap flag and told that that's what's patriotic. And in reality, half of their money is going to the war machine, while their kids don't have any insurance. They don't have any retirement. The roads are falling apart. The bridges are falling down. But hey, by God, we got to spend $1 trillion a year on those, getting rid of those bad guys overseas. Yeah. It's a problem of breaking through the propaganda. And Ray, honestly, I don't know how to do it. I wish there was a magic pill to do it.
This came into bas relief in the last few days. John McCain is gone. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times shedding abundant tears. Now, John McCain is the paradigm of the military-industrial congressional complex. And guess what? He used that phraseology in a speech. Quote, military-industrial congressional complex, end quote. McCain. Now, who would know better?
Yeah, in a good way he used it, I'm sure.
What's also lacking, Daniel, is any moral leadership. Now, I'm a Catholic, and I like Pope Francis, some of those things about Pope Francis. He's better than his predecessors. Let's damn him with faint praise, okay? Now, he comes to Congress almost 3 years ago now, and he says, the main problem is the blood-drenched arms traders. God, before Congress, right? So yeah. They all get up, like almost like for Bibi Netanyahu, and they're all. And then if you look close, Daniel, you can see they check their vest pockets to see if the last envelope from Lockheed is there and from Raytheon is. I mean, it was giving hypocrisy a bad name. Now, why do I raise that? Well, I raised that because that gave me some hope. There's some moral. There's a person who, maybe until last week, could pretend to have some moral leadership. What happens? Well, about a month later, Donald Trump's going to visit the Vatican. And McGovern is saying, oh, man, this is going to be great. Francis is going to tell him what he told the Congress, Maybe he'll tell him not to come. Instead, the president visits Saudi Arabia and concludes the biggest, most expensive arms deal in the world's history, right? Next stop, the Vatican. So I'm still hopeful, I mean, what more provocation does Francis need, right? So Pope walks in, and my liberal Catholic friend said, did you see what Francis did? I said, what do you mean? he didn't smile for the first 3 photo ops. How about that? Oh, God! I said, oh, yeah. What did he do later? Oh, well, then he smiled, and then he shook. I said, what else did he do? And he said, oh, yeah, he gave Trump an encyclical. An encyclical. Now, I don't want to demean the encyclical because it was a good one. It was about climate change. It was about global warming. Okay, and it'd be nice if Trump at least read the first couple pages. But what did that harken back to me? That harkened back to me the experience of World War II. Now, I was alive during that whole war. I was very, very small. But I remember reading after the war that a group of Dominicans at a monastery in southern France asked Albert Camus to come and talk to them about his experiences during the war. And they asked him, what did you think of the role of the church? And Camus said, you will be surprised to hear this because you know I'm an agnostic or an atheist, but I kept waiting for a word from Rome. Yes, my friends and I kept waiting for a word from Rome. No unambiguous word came from 1933 till the end of the war. So now, my friends tell me later that no, there was word from Rome. And I said, I didn't hear it. And they said, yes, it came in the form of an encyclical. And so I, Albert, said, what is an encyclical? And they explained this is a top document, it's most authoritative of the Pope. And so I said, if I didn't know what an encyclical was, much less knowing that there was an encyclical during the war, whose fault is that? Now, the link here. So Trump is given an encyclical. It's a good one. That's about the quintessential problem we face. It's about my 9 grandchildren not being able to have clean water or clean air when they get to be my age. It's good, but it's a little late, and it's a little beside the point when Francis has already gone on record as identifying the main problem, and that is the military. I use this: military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academe complex. That's what it is now. All of those things.
You could add think tank in there too, I think, Ray, by the way.
What's that?
I think you could almost add think tank in there as well. There's such a proliferation of particularly foreign-funded think tanks. Ironically, those of them who want to suss out foreign meddling, they're certainly happy to let foreign-funded think tanks like the Atlantic Council be their guides.
Yeah.
But you make a good point about moral culpability, and we live in an age where it's difficult to articulate this. But what about the moral culpability of, and I'm a Catholic too, Ray, a devout Catholic, of fellow Catholics who are participating in the military industrial complex, who are building bombs? That seems like a very difficult question. To me, it doesn't, but for many, I think, struggle over it.
Yeah, you're right about that. You put your finger on it. It's the whole economic thing. What will I do if I leave my job at Lockheed? And I know several friends who have wrestled with this, and precious few have made the courageous decision. Look, I have incredible talent and experience. I can certainly find a job, Yeah. So if we lack people with the courage of Matthew Ho, for example, former Marine captain in Iraq, and then high-level State Department official in Kabul, Afghanistan, he doesn't pay his taxes. Okay? Now, I'm not sure it's all the taxes, but he doesn't pay the 50% that goes to the war machine. That's guts, I haven't been able to summon that guts. I'd like to be able to. And we all have, these vested interests where we're kind of handcuffed by the prosperity that we as white, some of us males, at least white favored people have. And so as long as Trump and Obama before him and Bush before him are creating havoc in lands far away with people who don't look like me. It's somehow easier. And that, of course, is raw racism, what I consider to be the original sin of our country. I mean, look what we did to the Native Americans. So as long as people don't look like us, it's a lot easier to call them towelheads or gooks or camel jockeys and drone them to death.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a couple of minutes left, Ray, together, then you're off on your own, but maybe we can circle back to Julian Assange, because there was one other thing I wanted to raise with you to get your view on. And to me, you know, the whole issue of silencing him in March, to me, it seemed related to the fact that the Mueller investigation, everything that's underway, is really turning up very, very little. And so if you can shut this guy up and then put the blame all on him, hey, it was Assange, he was on the phone with Putin, Putin gave him the stuff to put up to get Trump in office. It seems very convenient now that when Assange is becoming a scapegoat, when they're basically bringing up nothing for this the Russiagate accusations.
Well, again, you've asked the right question, Daniel. Here's what I predict: that Mueller will come up with just the kind of damaging evidence you suggest, but it will be fraud. Now, McGovern, how could you suggest that? I mean, this Mueller is beatified in the New York Times and sainted in the Washington Post. Well, his record does not bear close scrutiny, I'll say that for Mueller. But there is precedent for this. It's called the faux, the false, the fraudulent intelligence before Iraq. No mistake. Don't believe Cheney and Bush if anyone's still inclined to believe these guys. It was not a mistake. It was out and out fraud. Now, who did the fraud? A fellow named George Tenet. Mm-hmm. And of whom is he a protege? John Brennan. Mm-hmm. So Mueller is not going to, look, he's been at it a year and a half. Peter Strzok was at it for 8 months before that. Strzok said after all his efforts, I don't know if I want to join the Mueller investigation because his quote, "There's no big there." Whoa. How do we see that? We see that in text he sent to his lover. Okay, so here, Strzok says there's no big there. Mueller labors for almost a year and a half more, is only able to come up with faux indictments of the 12 apostles, not 12, the 12 PRU people, right? So what's going to happen? Well, Mueller has a choice. Will he come up with nothing? His record suggests to me he'll come up with something. Where will he get it? He'll get it from John Brennan and his partners in crime. They'll represent that as the evidence to hang Trump. Now, do I want Trump to be hanged? I sure do. I want him to be impeached, but not on a cocked up, cockamamie, faux story without any evidence except the fraudulent evidence that I expect to be adduced now. Now, remember where you heard that first, because it's going to come, I think, and we'll have to see how the real people, and this is unprecedented. Devin Nunes in the House Intelligence Committee, he seems serious about this, and so do his co-chairs there of oversight and judiciary in the House. Oh, wow, they seem to want to hold people accountable. Now, the deep state almost always wins. And if I were a betting man, it would be hard for me to bet on Congress being successful in exerting its constitutional prerogatives. But, I like to think for this one time, they'll stand up and do what they're enjoying, what they're empowered to do. And we'll see how that will all work out because they have formidable foes. Just think of James Comey, John Brennan, and what's her name? The head of the Attorney General, who was implicated in all this. Think of them going to trial. Most people can't even think that image, but that's where they should be going because the evidence, written evidence, untreated evidence, is in the hands of these congressional investigators.
And look at, speaking of Mueller, look at his involvement in the Iraq lie. He many times put forth the the faux stories, as you point out, that Iraq was this and that, and to make the case for it. So that he certainly was involved in. And look how they can manufacture stories now that the several supposed chemical attacks in Syria were absolutely manufactured. The intelligence community assessments about those were totally manufactured. So I think you're right, Ray, and I fear you're right, I can say. And I also fear that Congress, which is probably one of the least informed institutions in the country, people don't understand this, but I spent 11 years on the Hill. People would be shocked at how little representatives read, at how little their staffers read. Maybe they'll read the Washington Post. They're not going to click on to Ray McGovern at antiwar.com or the Ron Paul Institute to get alternative information. So that's what fears me the most, makes me fear the most. The lack of intellectual curiosity on Capitol Hill is a big threat.
Yeah, and as you say, you've been there. You've tried to repair that. And I have to remember that when we learned that the intelligence community had done something honest at the end of 2007,
yes,
and published an estimate saying Iran stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2003 and had not resumed work on that. The only congressman interested in hearing about that was Ron Paul. He had several briefings set up for us to explain what that meant. Nobody else seemed to be aware, much less interested. So you're right. We need to educate these folks. We need to come up with inventive, imaginative, new ways to do it. I'm too old to imagine it, but we've got a bunch of young people. And let me just suggest that in the end, the fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves if we cannot break through.
That's a great closing, ending thought, Ray, with me joining you, and I do hope so. I don't know exactly what to do. We tried to end our show on Thursday about Assange with some brilliant ideas about how we can fix the problem, how we can get him free, how we can help other truth tellers. And as you say, I wish I were that creative and I could think of something. But there are young people. There is still technology, even with the crackdown on social media and alternative use. Something is coming. Something will come in the future. Dr. Paul always says, all the armies of the world cannot stop an idea whose time has come, and I think peace is an idea whose time has come.
One last thing. I talked about young people, but they're old people too. And Daniel, I would just suggest people think about the Great Salt March. Imagine, we can imagine this. Imagine 5,000 people in London, one by one, going up to the door of the Ecuadorian embassy. Maybe they won't be shot or batoned like used to happen in India, but they'll have to be dragged away. And just maybe there aren't enough jails in London to hold them all. Maybe that's what it would take. Maybe we have to put our bodies into it. I would be willing to do that myself.
Well, we certainly know that you have been in the past, Ray, unfortunately. But I think that's a wonderful idea. 10,000 people, 1,000 people. They couldn't ignore it. So let's hope something like that does happen, and it happens soon, because poor Julian is in a terrible situation, and he did it for us. He did it for us to understand what our government's doing in our name, and I think we have an obligation to try to return the favor.
Amen.
All right. Well, I think it's about time for me to leave you, Ray. I hope that I'm sure that I will leave this in good hands. And I want to thank everyone who's organized this event. And let's cross our finger and let's say our prayers that hopefully they'll be answered and Julian will be free soon. All right, Ray, it's all yours. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Daniel.